Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us up here at the Mount Howell Lookout, one of our CAL FIRE lookouts on top of this beautiful landscape overlooking the communities of Colfax, Weimar, Applegate, and the interstate corridor. My name is Brian Estes. I'm the Unit and Fire Chief for CAL FIRE in the Nevada Yuba Placer Unit. And I want to talk a little bit about the importance of why we're here today. This project, this fuels reduction project behind me, an understory prescribed fire burn, is part of a larger, multi-year project in the hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of acres, stretching really from the communities of Alta and Dutch Flat along the rim of the canyon all the way down to the city of Auburn. And much of this was funded through the 2018 and 2019 governor's priority projects that we submitted and the governor's office funded, really in protecting, in alignment with the county of Placer's priorities and with our partners in protecting the communities of Colfax, Applegate, Weimar, and the critical infrastructure that sits along Interstate 80. One of the things we're faced with in this region is the interstate itself, a major petroleum pipeline, the UP rail line, and both the commerce and the visitation, the recreation, and hundreds of thousands of vehicles of both private and commerce that pass through these corridors every single week. So the protection of these communities from damaging wildfire is very, very important to us. We have a rich fire history in the canyon to the east of us here in the North Fork of the American River, but most recently we've had the communities of Colfax and Applegate directly impacted by fires. So working with our partners, with the federal government and local county partners, this remains paramount in my priorities as the fire chief, and we will continue to make it a priority into the future in making these communities resilient and safe. So again, welcome. We appreciate everyone joining us. And with that, I'd like to introduce our Chief Deputy Director of Operations, Chief Annalee Berlew.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Chief Estes. My name is Annalee Berlew. I'm the Chief Deputy Director of Operations for CAL FIRE. 25 years ago, I started my CAL FIRE career here as a seasonal firefighter in the Nevada Yuba Placer Unit. Early as a firefighter, I was taught the importance of team and teamwork in firefighting. And quickly I learned that team extended beyond my engine and team extended beyond CAL FIRE. On the front lines, when we're fighting fire, team includes our local, state, federal, and tribal partners. And as my career has progressed, that concept of teammates, of partnership, has held true in every aspect of the fire service in California. Because our landscapes, everything we do, everything we touch, are interconnected. This matters not only in suppression, but also in preparedness, prevention, and resiliency. It takes all of us, local, state, tribal, and federal partners, to be successful. Because destructive fires in California affect everyone, whether it's smoke, evacuation, damage to home or natural resources, or long-term fiscal impacts. We are all connected, and the impacts of wildfire ripple through communities, cities, and regions. As we approach the July 4th weekend, and much of Northern California is under a red flag warning for lightning and increased risk of fast-moving fires, our firefighters are ready. But our true preparation starts long before the fire conditions arise. That's where prevention comes in. Prevention is the core of our mission. It has to happen year-round, and it has to happen by all of us. I am so proud to report that by May of this year, CAL FIRE had already exceeded all of our strategic fire prevention goals for this fiscal year. And we're still counting the progress that we made in June, so those numbers continue to grow. These goals include fuel reduction projects, prescribed fire, first time ever that we met or exceeded our prescribed fire goal. That's the beneficial fire on our landscape, over 50,000 acres, and defensible space inspections, keeping our communities safe. These are on-the-ground projects accomplished through the hard work at the local level, led by CAL FIRE and our grantees. This work is a direct result of investments of the legislation and the Newsom administration. We know every acre of fuel reduction work is an investment in public safety. These projects are making a positive impact every single day, not just for firefighters, but for our communities that they serve. So far in 2025, there's been over 3,200 wildfires, and we just started July. Most of these fires, though, we don't hear about them in the news. We don't hear about the destruction they caused because preventative measures and quick response operationally are able to keep these fires small. That's the key. Keep these fires small. Don't let them be newsworthy because those prevention measures are already in place and fire resources are able to quickly get there. Fuel reduction efforts reduce the rate in which wildfires spread. They lower fire intensity, making fires more manageable. Less intense fires means more time for evacuation, time that can save lives. Fuel reduction is not just land management, it's proactive firefighting. Again, fuel reduction is not just land management, it is proactive firefighting. And that's what we're doing here, that's what we're seeing around us today. It is not just about doing the work, but it's also about proving that it does work. Fuel treatment effectiveness reports are now available on CAL FIRE's website. We are showing that the past investments have directly changed fire behavior and improved outcomes for communities and firefighters. We are doing all this work, but we need to ensure that this work, that these investments that we are making is actually valuable as we are fighting fire, as we are evacuating people out of these communities during wildfires. And that's what those reports are doing. And we want to be able to show the public, we want to be able to show the legislature that these investments are working, and we want to be able to evaluate those investments as well, so that we know how to do more and better in the future together. With support from the governor and the legislature, over $2.5 billion has been invested statewide in prevention and resilience since 2020. We just announced and are currently accepting applications for wildfire prevention grants. This provides $135 million for projects that that reduce risk and build resilience and save lives. These projects on state, local, tribal, and federal lands that make our communities safer. Fire preparedness is a shared responsibility. 95% of wildfires are caused by human activity. The number of acres burned in California continues to rise as the weather gets hotter and more people are outdoors for summer activities. But we're all in this together. Fire prevention is not just CAL FIRE's responsibility, it's a shared mission between local, state, tribal, and federal governments, communities, and every individual. Together, we can reduce the threat and protect California. ReadyForWildfire.org has everything you need to get your property and family prepared for wildfire. Next up, I would like to introduce the Director of the Governor's Office of Wildfire and Forest Resilience Task Force, Patrick Wright.
Thank you, Annalee, and good morning. I am Patrick Wright. I'm Director of the Governor's Wildfire and Forest Resilience Task Force. The Governor created the task force back in 2021 to better align the efforts of federal, state, local, tribal, and private entities to attack the state's wildfire crisis. We immediately brought those groups together and issued the nation's first and most ambitious statewide wildfire resilience plan, which has guided our efforts ever since. And that collaborative effort, as Annalee said, is paying off. Collectively, the state and federal agencies have spent billions of dollars over the last several years, led by the state's $2.5 billion investment, which has paid for more than 2,200 projects throughout the state. That funding has also enabled us to scale up. We're now collectively treating more than 700,000 acres annually together with our federal partners. And we've created new tools to better demonstrate and showcase those efforts. You can now go on to the task force website and see a dashboard that shows every one of thousands of projects done by the Forest Service, state parks, CAL FIRE, local entities, et cetera, to better educate you on what we're doing. Now, and then I would also say the governor more recently is further leading the way with a new streamlining effort. Used to take months, if not years, to get projects approved. Gone, though, now are the days of multiple agency reviews of multiple projects. It's all been replaced by a streamlined one-stop shop between the agencies that are involved in permitting projects. Now, I wish I could say that the federal side is equally stepping up, but we're deeply concerned that recent cutbacks and forthcoming cutbacks may jeopardize our progress and threaten our partnership, which in turn may threaten communities and forests throughout the state. Make no mistake, in many parts of California, federal staff are the backbone of our system. They know the terrain, they know the community, they know the fire risk. They don't need fancy computer models to tell them where to focus to make those communities safe. Much of that is now at risk if the feds don't step up their funding and their resources across the board. Now, to be sure, the state agencies are stepping up in response to that. Collectively, the state agencies have spent more than $350 million for projects on federal land in the last several years, and we're surging forward. We're going to prepare an update of our joint action plan by the end of the year, which is going to call for a statewide network of wildfire resilience plan and also a statewide network of fuel breaks that connect federal, state, private, and local land. But as you can imagine, none of that is possible without a strong partnership. This area is a great example. CAL FIRE can do everything it can to try to protect the surrounding community, but if the adjacent Forest Service land is not treated, the community is going to be at risk. So we're going to continue at the task force to surge forward and hope and expect that the federal agencies will continue to be there to do their part. Our forests and our communities depend on it. Thank you. And now we'll hear from the governor.
Thank you, Patrick, for the overview, and Chief, thank you, all of you, for being here to Conservation Corp. Thank you for your extraordinary work and sacrifice. I mean, it's 10 in the morning. I can't even imagine what it's like in a few hours out there on the ridge, and all that hard work that you're doing every single day. To everyone in uniform, grateful for your service and grateful for your sacrifice and commitment to this cause. Look, we've spent a lot of time together over the course of the last number of years talking about the imperative of prevention, not just response and recovery. Here today, we are highlighting some of the preparedness work. And you heard just a moment ago the unprecedented investments that are being made in the state, the unprecedented results of those investments. But the state can only do so much. The state of California manages 3% of the land in California, 3%. 57% of the land in this state is under the jurisdiction of the federal government. 57% under the jurisdiction of the federal government, 3% under the jurisdiction of the state. We have more than doubled our investments in the last number of years across the spectrum of investments around forest and vegetation management, around investments in CAL FIRE, around investments in our suppression and new technologies. But it is not enough without an equivalent commitment from the federal government. And so what we are calling for today is something we've called for in the past. In fact, in 2019, I was here in Colfax, just a mile or so away, the first full day in office as governor, signed an executive order, emergency proclamation to prioritize 35 high-profile vegetation management projects in the state to fast-track the approval process. That same day, we also sent a letter to then President Donald Trump, asking them and the administration asking him to resolve to do more and be more accountable to fires that are occurring and initiating on federal land. The Camp Fire, Calder Fire, the Ranch Fire just in San Bernardino just a few weeks ago that struck almost 4,000 acres, all federal fires. Half of the new fire starts just over the course of the last 48 hours have been on federal land, just associated specifically in the last 24 with the lightning strikes in Northern California. We need an equivalent commitment of resources, not rhetoric, to support these partnerships. The reality is the Senate just hours ago cut the budgets to the Forest Service. This administration has cut the budget to NOAA. This administration has cut the budget to FEMA. We have less access to incident command teams. The U.S. Forest Service. The U.S. Forest Service is underpaid, not just understaffed and under-resourced. The previous administration made investments to increase pay, but it's not enough. They're losing personnel. It's been a benefit for CAL FIRE, but they're losing personnel in critical parts of this state. This is about life safety. We're putting people's lives and property at risk. The President of the United States needs to do more to back up his rhetoric with investments and resources, to roll back the cuts at the U.S. Forest Service, to increase the pay of our firefighters and support teams, and to reconcile the fact that these partnerships include the critical weather monitoring, the critical work that NOAA does, and obviously the critical resources that FEMA has historically provided. So we laid out not just our request in detail in a letter, but also in an executive order that the President could sign this afternoon after he makes his way back from some East Coast Alcatraz visit that he was on in the Everglades. This is serious business. The state has seriously resolved to commit to do more than we have historically, and we need to match or see that ambition matched at the federal level. That's the fundamental message that I wanted to communicate. Let me just reiterate, and of course open up for questions, some of the points that Patrick and others, the chief, made. 730,000 acres treated. It was a record in 2023. Over 2 million now acres of projects. Just from 2021 to 2023, we're advanced 2,200 now with a new dashboard for more transparency. Treated these 730,000 acres. We show exactly the progress of those 2,200 plus landscape vegetation and forest management projects throughout the state. You can go on this interactive map and you can see precisely where we are. Unprecedented investments in providing support as well with tools of technology that have aided in this effort as it relates to 3D modeling, as it relates to LiDAR technology that's aided and advanced some of these efforts. All of those, of course, stacking in terms of our prevention and suppression efforts as well. I've highlighted the 16 new helicopters we brought in to the world's largest aerial firefighting fleet, largest in the world, 16 that have capacity now to drop suppressants at night, the C-130s now that are under the color of CAL Guard, under the color of the CAL FIRE. We're proud of the fact we've got 2 operational. We'll have another in the matter of weeks. We'll get all 7 up and operational in the matter of many months. We continue to make more investments as it relates to AI and more investments as it relates to other technology, including technology behind you in front of me, these state-of-the-art cameras. This is one of our critical sites for that camera technology, the alert technology. We have positioned all throughout the state of California, which allows us access to early capacity for identifying these starts. So I'm just grateful for the legislature, for their ongoing commitment. That was reinforced last night as we signed off on the final phase of our budget. We'll continue to make those investments, not just this year, but going into the future. 2,400 CAL FIRE staff that we're committed to increase roughly 11,000 current staff over the next 5 years. That's our commitment. And we'll continue to 10x. That's what we've done, from $200 million to $2.5 billion, the investments we're making in forest and vegetation management. So long-winded, forgive me, but very proud of some of these efforts. But we cannot do it alone in isolation. We need the support of the federal government. The Trump administration needs to step up, and they need to fund these efforts, not just here in California, but throughout the Western United States. Lives and property are on the line. And so I cannot impress upon those in Congress and those at the White House the importance as we go into peak fire season. Final point. It's also critical that we get our men and women back, the National Guard, to get them back doing the work in partnership with the Conservation Corps and CAL FIRE to get these projects moving again. 8 out of 14 of our rattlesnake teams were degraded. And you've got men and women, literally, not even a sign, sitting there in their barracks doing nothing when they were doing something as important as preparing for wildfire season. Hundreds of people were taken off the job of preparing for wildfire season for theater, theatrics. Less than 20% of the 5,000 military now, less than 20% have been mission assigned. And it's not just the rattlesnake teams, the hundreds of people that were out there protecting your communities, but they took teachers out of schools. They took firefighters out of stations. They took law enforcement off the streets. They took people away from their families and homes for nothing. They're sitting there doing nothing. 5,000. Hundreds of millions of dollars of wasted taxpayer money for theater, for nothing. We need those teams back. And it's not just the rattlesnake teams. It's the drug interdiction that they were doing to deal with the fentanyl crisis, the work we were doing down at the border. They were taking off those critical assignments for theater, for nothing more than theater. And so part of our request to this administration is immediately reassign the men and women of the National Guard to partner with these remarkable people behind me to keep our communities safe and prepare for this year's fire season. With that, we're happy to answer any questions. A few weeks ago. Yeah.
When was the last time you guys spoke directly about this request on forest land and managing forest land?
Well, we've had this conversation over the course of many, many years, and he's well aware of the importance of these investments, not only from the time that he and I spent at Camp Fire in Paradise, seeing the destruction of that again on a federal land initiated, the responsibility that's placed with him to rake his forests, 57%, 3% California responsibility, 57% his responsibility. Patrick just made the point, $350 million of state taxpayer money to rake his forests, the federal forests, because they're not doing their job. So we've had this conversation over the course of many, many years. We've sent a number of direct correspondence. We've worked through our congressional delegation. We've worked through our state staff that resides in Washington, D.C. to make this a priority. I could not be more pleased with the leadership of Adam Schiff and Senator Padilla in particular on this issue, that have been strong advocates with their colleagues in Congress. And there are a number of members of our California delegation that have led the way. There are other members of the California delegation that just supported cuts to Forest Service and forest management, and cuts to NOAA and FEMA, which is remarkable. Many of them allegedly represent, look that word up, districts like this.
In the past, you've noted that you and the president have worked well together on at least disaster relief. I mean, is this request specifically just, do you think it's just falling on deaf ears?
Well, it shouldn't. People's lives are at risk. Property is at risk. This is serious stuff. Taking 5,000 military for no purpose, taking hundreds of them off the lines that were advancing a purpose of keeping people safe and keeping property and mitigating risk. Serious business, so I hope he takes it seriously.
Leah Russell from the Secretary, following up with that, he's displayed a very limited understanding of how forest management, fire.
Well, he's serious when he talks about raking. I mean, he's actually serious, which is an extraordinary thing. I'll leave that to more objective minds, but he quite literally thinks you should just go out and rake the forests, make America rake again.
What makes you think that this time he'll listen?
Well, to the pleas of people, neighbors, residents. I saw a lot of Trump signs around here. I mean, I think he claims to care about the people who voted for him, though with this big betrayal, this bill, there's a lot of evidence to suggest otherwise, just gutting rural parts of this country. And so many of his supporters, literally, just gutting support. I guess that's consistent. He maintains a consistency of literally turning the back on the same people he claims to care so much about. So I hope he'll come back in the fold and recognize he has a responsibility and reconcile this betrayal. Well, I don't know how, I mean, that's an understatement. But you know, I have an open hand as it relates to wanting to work together. I maintain that. I maintain that, and just I'll remind you all, just the proof point during COVID. We're going back and forth, and we worked extraordinarily well together. The conversation I had with him just a few weeks ago was extraordinarily cordial. He followed up by lying about the conversation, and over our objection, taking men and women off the front lines that were addressing the crisis that we're trying to address as it relates to vegetation and forest management for no other purpose than theatrics. So, yeah, we have strong disagreements at this moment. Nothing. We're working with other, not only our congressional delegation here, but other delegations across the United States. Those dollars, disaster dollars, recovery dollars, are not unique to California, meaning there are a number of other states that are requesting significant sums of money, including in South Carolina, North Carolina, notably. And we're working with those delegations, those governors, Republicans and Democrats. And we're hopeful that this summer, early fall, that we'll see some progress in that space.
Governor, you're talking about federal rollbacks on forest climate. There's also plenty of examples of in-state Democrats, national Democrats, taking steps back on climate change. For example, there's a bill to weaken the low carbon fuel standards. There's a pause on the refinery profit cap. So I want to know, are you retreating on climate change and why?
Well, quite the contrary. No state has done more to advance the cause of low carbon green growth in the state of California. And so that remains, that commitment, that resolve remains. As it relates to, I think, two specific examples, there's always legislative efforts in both parties to make adjustments, make change to ongoing programs. We'll look at those on the merits. And we're constantly trying to iterate. But no, quite the contrary. And I think you see that across the spectrum, not only as it relates to the remarkable investments that we're making as it relates to investing in climate adaptation, as it relates to invest in the way we produce and consume energy, but also in our litigation posture as it relates to the rollbacks of progress under this administration. And we continue to highlight, particularly today in the Senate's action, the unprecedented vandalism as it relates to green energy and tax policy that was highlighted by Elon Musk himself, a true betrayal to the future. They're doubling down on the past, and California wants to maintain its leadership in the absence of federal leadership.
Hi, Governor. I'm Tegan Brostrom, an intern with KCRA. Do you have any idea how many fires have been on federal land since President Trump took office in 2017?
Well, if I had that numeric, I'm going to compete with ChatGPT. So let me get back to you. But we can analyze that. The 3,200 was a good stat. Just puts it in perspective. I mean, it's, these guys, it's, I said all the time, it's unlike baseball. They don't get credit for saves. And they deserve credit for saves. It's what we don't hear about, what we don't know about. Keeping these fire starts under 10 acres. And that's an incredibly important numeric, 98+%. They're able to suppress early. That's the goal, and they're executing on that. But it is unsurprisingly a disproportionate share on the very nature and basis, the fact that just 3% of the land is state land, the rest private and obviously federal. But it's, look, for us, we're not pointing fingers. We've got incident command teams. We're all in this together. And that's back to the comment was made. It's about partnership. And we just need a partner, not a sparring partner, in the spirit of your question about Trump, a working partner. when it comes to these issues, they shouldn't be political. And that's what's frustrating about this. They often are. They're threatening to withhold money from a state because that state has different policy positions on a few critical issues, withholding money on that basis for disaster recovery. It's absurd. And I think it's un-American. And it's certainly not the approach we take. I said it on many occasions. I was proud as a taxpayer to help support the folks in Speaker Johnson's district with recovery. I was proud to support the folks out there in Florida and Governor DeSantis. We provided a lot of resources. These guys sent teams out there to help them in times of recovery. It's a point of deep pride. I've done the same with Governor Abbott in Texas. It's what it's about to be an American. United States of America, not red state of America and blue state of America. Time for a little patriotism, or maybe a little lesson on patriotism as we enter the 4th of July. Part of that patriotism is to let these men and women in uniform that have been federalized for purely theatrical purposes back home. Thousands and thousands of military want to be back with their families, celebrating the 4th of July. That would be a patriotic act by the President of the United States. He'd have the back of the men and women in uniform, uses them for political purposes. Why doesn't he celebrate their families as he celebrates this country? I would celebrate that action. And while he's at it, let's get these rattlesnake teams back out there and get our counter-drug task forces fully staffed again. And the work we're doing with Border Patrol, we've been doing since 2019, and get that back operational.
And Mr. Governor, interesting thing here, Atal Wallace with Next Star Station. Interesting thing is you've actually written a template for this executive order. Yes, so all we have to do is.
Well, we made it easy. Here it is. It's a simple executive order. It just requires one thing, that large Sharpie and a signature. He gave me 7 of them. I can actually hand one back. He's out of one. Simple pen. There's a paper. You can make America rake again. Not complicated. Simple executive order. And I know that, may have a little fun with that, but this is a very serious executive order. And it lays out in detail what the President of the United States can do to support the people of this great state of California.
If I may just go back to the questions about some of the legislation and the climate policy rollback, I just want to confirm what the Vice Chair of CWW, the California Energy Commission, sent to you in terms of the recommendations of SBX 12. I mean, there's something in there about retaining domestic oil production in the state. I mean, are these things that you would be on board with, or are these things you are reviewing to consider?
For reviewing, I directed him through an executive order to come back with me with a comprehensive letter. We created a task force that Siva chaired. We've been meeting with refiners. We've been meeting with folks in the extraction industry, not just refiners. And we've been meeting with experts all across this country, and I've been advised with people around the globe. I drove here, happen to drive an electric car, but often in a car that uses fuel. I will be flying to Los Angeles tomorrow. I'm not naive about the imperative of a transition that's rational and addresses nature of change. And a lot has changed in the global markets, a lot of change in supply chains. A lot continues to change as it relates to the price of oil. Refineries all across the globe are struggling. You've seen national reports that reinforce these global trends. We're not immune from them. There's a large refiner in Texas, extraordinarily large, that went out of business. We've got some challenges, and so it just requires some new considerations. That's not rolling back anything. That's actually marching forward in a way that is thoughtful and considered. And that's what a just transition is all about. So Siva laid out some alternative pathways for us to get there, and they're being reviewed in real time. There's an imperative to move on this, and we'll be making some recommendations and also working with legislative leaders, because there were some legislative requests that came from that letter for their consideration as well. And so we're looking to brief the legislature in more detail, and we're looking to move very quickly on some of those recommendations.
Last question.
Okay.
Going back to CalGuard, the AP reported yesterday that Norcom has asked that 200 members be returned to wildfire duty. Do you know anything about that?
Well, Secretary Exit, our defense secretary, might take that recommendation and direct these young men and women back and get them back out here. So I'm hopeful. Well, we've been very vocal about that, not just part of it. We've been explicit in that request for the last few weeks. We couldn't be more clear in highlighting this issue. And so we've been very direct. And we've not just done that publicly, we've done that privately, we've done that through the chain of command. This is serious stuff. Well, the response that you highlighted, that the AP highlighted, was the first indication that our requests are being considered, and we're looking forward to the formal announcement from the Department of Defense and from the Secretary of Defense, and we're hopeful that occurs imminently, so we can get these folks back out there. And the same should be extended for those teachers that want to teach summer school. Same should be extended to those firefighters that want to go back and protect their communities at home, and those in law enforcement, sworn officers that were taken off the beat and streets that should get back home as well, not just the rattlesnake teams. I mean, this is just the theater of the absurd. The whole thing is a theater of the absurd. And everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. And so it's time for grown-ups to do the right thing and send these men and women back and do so immediately. With that, grateful. Thanks, everybody.